These 5 decks are probably the most interesting ones for the August metagame. Now make sure you guys smash the link crap out of that Blitzclick button so you guys don't miss out on more content. Now this is actually particularly interesting to me. Actually seeing Blitzclick up front and center, considering how much this deck was actually just despised by the community as time has kind of progressively gone on. I honestly think Blitzclick's career has actually just gotten worse in the community's eye as time has gone on, and that's hilarious. But this deck has started topping regionals very recently, which forces us to kind of reevaluate our stance on the metagame right now with this. So is the deck actually competitively viable? I think so. I think it's a deck that obviously requires a correct deck build. You're going to have to go into this with the mentality of, all right, we're going to have to get the correct build set up here. We're going to have to make sure that ratios are correct, and you're going to have to make sure, and I mean, like, that's the truth about any of these decks in general anymore as you're, deciding to go about deck builds. The perfect brew is going to mean everything. Also, the discussion on, do we want to go with Thunder King Ryos? Do we want to build, the Rysel package into it? How are these sub-extra concepts going to build into the deck for the best possible solutions? I don't hate the idea of putting Rysel in the deck. I think having Rysel as a sub-package for you to be able to filter through and actually get some setup with is actually not a terrible idea. I think it actually does help out a lot of the matchups a little bit more than you would kind of expect it to, because it gives you more of an end board presence on the back end of this. And that's kind of the important thing you got to look at here is like, Blitzclick, the pure build just kind of folds to certain matchups. So you have to find a way to kind of ease that in and be able to patch up those issues. And I think this is actually the best method to do so. Which brings us to Invoked. Invoked, if this deck is not on your radar right now, you're not paying attention to the correct meta. So Invoked actually getting its extra name and consistency upgrades, I'll mind you, actually I think was a fantastic help to the strategy. It's helped elevate the deck to a higher level of play that I don't really think maybe people were really wanting to see. I think having that extra elevation has helped the deck's consistency a lot. Now, in terms of the things that this deck can do, Super Poly is a madman in this deck. Every possible tool that you can think of is an additional resource for you to be able to use. And that's quite interesting in hindsight to think about that, this deck is able just to break down so many boards because of the way that it just initially breaks down with the Super Poly targets. Also, you get extra deck ripping, which, as we have seen a lot in this format, being able to specifically dive into an extra deck and rip out any problematic cards that exist in there is absolutely and very much a problem in today's game. But it's also the fact this deck has a Macro Cosmo sitting on an extra deck monster that also gives it an edge in certain matchups, which you wouldn't think that matters truly all that much, but it is a finisher nonetheless, just to be able to win in certain situations. So that is also pretty important. Super Poly just gets to wreck things, but also the fact that we have the Macrocosmic Space Whale that just does so much by itself. Yeah, this deck needs to be on your radar for sure. There's also been some uptick in clown activity. The Rolad Clown deck is actually, I think, one of my funniest decks that I've seen kind of doing well this format, because the concept of the deck is you're able to use like Witch of the Black Forest to be able to bridge through extra little combo lines, kind of help set you up for consistency. But then you just get to do some incredibly dumb things with the clowns. Bianca Vicio being able to deploy a sphere mode on the opponent's turn and just board break them as they're trying to set up for whatever combo line they're trying to do is undoubtedly, and actually some of the funniest Yu-Gi-Oh! I think I have seen in the modern times, right? Being able just to have a clown do clown things clowning on the opponent is a very, very major Yu-Gi-Oh thing, and it's great. Now, I did mention Ritual of Light and Darkness here, but this is a rogue deck, Robbie. Yes, it is, but unfortunately, as we have seen in the more modern times, if your deck can play a competent engine from the top half of the meta, you will usually want to be able to use that as a consistency enabler or upgrade for your deck to be able to reliably do its extra combo lines. And there is like zero punishing factor for building in the Ritual of Light and Darkness into the deck. Because, I mean, where in Rolad do you need to special summon from the extra deck? The answer is, you don't have to. You're doing ritual summons that are going to be rotating through, you know, the Ritual of Light and Darkness. Things that now lock the extra deck can look at Rolad and go, this is a secondary engine for us to be able to filter through. That is not a problem. That's something to kind of think about just in terms of general deck building overall. Can Rolad help me out? We also have Fairy Tale. Fairy Tale is an interesting one because this deck only gets better as time goes on with kind of like every release that we've been getting. Now, it's still Luna, Fairy Tale, Control, play all of the good stuff that you can, wait for us to get the additional pieces or hope that some ban list actually gives this deck an upgrade later on in its life. I think right now, my takeaway with Fairy Tale is the deck just has a lot of good play lines. The fact that they gave us back Fairy Tale Snow as a one-of to help elevate the consistency of this pile was actually a good thing on Konami's part. Because they knew that people wanted to play the Spellcaster pile, and they knew it was a very, very popular metagame choice by the community. So actually seeing this coming to fruition, I think is not a bad thing. I'm actually particularly excited just to see where this deck is going to evolve from. But right now, I think it's been struggling a little bit in the format. I think it's just because like Rolad has kind of just taken the big seat. You know, this deck playing in Rolad, I feel like sometimes doesn't have a good matchup. I don't know. I went into this not having much to say about Fairy Tale. I still don't have much to say about Fairy Tale. Abuse Fairy Tale Snow as much as you can. You know, control your opponent. Use the floating rank 4s to be able to do the job. You know, you still have access to Rabuska or good old Boguska. You know, you have... Honestly, the tool set for this deck is very unique for what it is. Because if you look at it first on paper, you might not get the instant click of what's the appeal for this. But I think as more time has gone on, I think players have really started to kind of figure out, oh, hey, you know, this works. And then, of course, we're going to leave Mitsu on this list. Mitsu is, like, still the poster child of being this deck that kind of it flew too close to the sun, you know, and it got brought down. But as we've seen time and time again, you know, Murakumo and Friends is another engine that splashes very, very well into these decks. And as we kind of continue to see the same thing happening over and over again, which is just, you know, is it pure Mitsugi, or do we splash Mitsugi into decks? You know, what is the most consistent method to get the best result? And right now, it's probably trying to splash it in, because we're in an era of 60 card piles are starting to wake up right now. Players are starting to realize, oh, hey, you know, if I combine this Rolad package with Mitsugi and, you know, we shove in an Azamina package, you know, can we get more engines in here? Is there a confliction of building this in? You know, they start to look at D-Mod and so forth. All of these bridging combo lines that your deck, you wouldn't think matter, but they fundamentally are making these shifts, and they're actually working out very, very well. I think, personally, that is really, really cool. And I do look forward to seeing, you know, how decks like Mitsu are going to kind of evolve with the times, because that's actually pretty unique. Once again, engines, 60 card piles. That is where we're at right now. So what do you guys think? Please, you know, leave a comment down below. Tell me what you guys think. And I'll see your beautiful faces back here in a day, guys. Peace. Patrons. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.